This is Sonia Wagner representing PCA Families in one of our many recordings designed to capture lived experience and best practice evidence-based learning that assists kinship, permanent and adoptive parents and carers in supporting young people. Being able to learn from peers and connect with those who may help us is particularly important. Today we are discussing estate planning and why it is so important when you have multiple children and families to consider. Before we do, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet. We pay respect to elders past and present and express our intention to move together to a place of justice and partnership. Today I'm joined by Naomi Colville. Naomi is a board member of PCA Families. She has two children that are 8 and 11 years old, and she has lived experience of permanent care and NDIS and disability services. She's also a proud granddaughter of the Palawa Nations of Northeast Tasmania. Naomi, do you have anything to add about your background or your passions?
We are a busy family. And as you've explained, I have two primary age school children, one at specialist school and one at mainstream school. So, I get 2 newsletters and I get 2 sports days. And our world is busy. And I sit on the board at Permanent Care Families, so that keeps me my mind ticking over and my life busy. So
Very busy.
Thank you for having me.
Very busy. Now, do you read all those newsletters?
I do.
Hats off to you. That's something I didn't always do.
Speed reading is my friend.
So today we're going to talk about estate planning. Preparation for many situations and events is a really big part of our lives. However, often seeing a lawyer and preparing for a will is an expensive, time-consuming and thought-provoking process. Wills are often something that we leave to another day, and often that day never comes. That day did come for you. So what were some of the matters that drove you to take that step and make arrangements for your estate and your children?
When we first were placed with our permanent care child, he was 10 months old back in 2010. And one of the very first jobs we thought we needed to tick off once we had permanent care orders, which for us came about 10 months later, was to enshrine our very meagre finances into something that might protect him. We were at that time and still are a single income family on carer's pension. He has significant disability. So we were of a sense that we had to protect his future, and we looked locally for advice, which was found wanting. We're in a small country town, and we did the best that we could. We had a basic will drawn up, and we had him named, and the advice didn't sort of extend much more than that. So we had some tricky access problems like we do with often with permanent care placement, and we were really concerned that whatever structure was in place for him needed to protect him from any challenge from his biological family in the first instance, from his biological parents. We have great relationships with his siblings and still do, but we were concerned that there would potentially be a challenge if something was to happen to my husband and I before he was of age. But we resigned ourselves to the general advice that we were given, and we didn't it never sat comfortably, but we kind of couldn't access anything better until much, much later, and he's now 11. So the rest of the story will unfold. Since then, we had our own biological child. She came 2 years after his placement with us. So our world is complex because of the makeup of our little family.
Yes. And I think that's a, really important reason to get involved and establish a will, isn't it? You're wanting to protect your children's rights and make sure that things go forward as you'd expect them to. So
that's exactly right.
Yeah. And what were some of the important matters you learnt about and needed to consider when you finally did get that sort of detailed advice, disability trusts or other things?
Disability trusts. Well, how we came to our next stage was this last 6 months where I had read on a Facebook post about Special Disability Trust, and I wondered whether in our circumstance with his quite significant disability, whether or not he might be eligible. It is quite a process to work out whether you're eligible. It's a Centrelink process, need I say any more?
Okay. Yeah.
So when we decided that we probably needed to understand a little bit better, we also had to factor in our own biological child.
Mm-hmm.
We had to think about really was the cost of looking at and discovering what we might need, the research and putting together something and having a chat with a lawyer. Was it really worth the money? Did we actually really want to go down that track?
Mm-hmm.
There isn't a lot of money. We're not rich folk.
Mm-hmm.
And we were really keen not to have a structure that would shore up any challenge, that they were both safe, that they both had a financial future planned for them.
Mm-hmm.
And we're pushing 50. I think there's a certain amount of I don't know, mortality hits, midlife crisis.
Reflection.
Reflection, our parents are aging, all those things played into what do we do? Primary school age kids and hitting midlife. I don't think we consider 50 to be midlife anymore,
Yeah.
but for us, that was sort of okay, we need to get a bit more serious
Mm-hmm.
about our decisions. So we started basically. And there was a lot of things that we learned during the process.
Okay. So what were some of those things that you learnt about that you needed to consider?
Well, how we stumbled across the whole consideration of the whole situation was that I listened to a webinar given by one of the NGOs that support carers.
Okay.
And they were talking to a very savvy financial and legal person who spoke about the need to make sure that kids in care, particularly kids with disability,
Mm-hmm.
are catered for, because if you leave it to chance, then you are really jeopardising their future.
Mm-hmm.
We can't tell what successive governments will do in the way of accommodating our children. And if we're to pass away, die, leave this mortal earth before they're 18, which seems very, very young to make huge decisions about big estates, then we want the structure in place to be
Mm-hmm.
able to contend with that for them and on their behalf. So from that webinar, I got excited and scared all at once. And we took up the offer of the free half hour, assess what you might require. And that was eye-opening.
Okay.
Really
Yeah.
eye-opening.
Oh, great. So there was a lot of things that you learnt about that you maybe hadn't thought about before.
We didn't know that Special Disability Trust existed before then.
Mm-hmm.
It was a case of understanding that, and the information that comes from Centrelink on SDT is mind-boggling and not for
Mm-hmm.
the faint-hearted.
Mm-hmm.
You then have to be assessed. The beneficiary has to be assessed as eligible to be in receipt of that trust.
Okay.
So that's a process.
Right.
You kind of have to open up. If you're not opened up already from PC or from NDIA or from every other damn thing, you really need to be open up for that.
Right.
And
Wow.
it's quite a confronting process, I guess, because you are talking about the things that we don't all like to talk about, and that is your ultimate demise.
Wow.
And I guess one
Yeah.
of the sort of most convoluted thing for us was because of the Special Disability Trust, and having a child at that stage that was neurotypical. She's not now, we've discovered, but in the course of our discussions with the lawyer initially there was two very separate plans for a person who was going to be going on in their adult life to manage their own finances and manage their own accommodation and pay their bills, compared to the child that won't ever do that, doesn't
Yes.
understand the difference between $100 and $1, can come shopping and can cut up fruit and vegetables, but can't pay for them.
Yes.
These kind of considerations about where each child would be and what structures needed to be in place for each of them and separately.
Okay. Were there any other things that related to being in permanent care as a beneficiary of a will, or was it more around that?
It's really interesting because there's not much that I have found, and I'm by no means exhausted all of the possibility of finding out, but there isn't a heck of a lot of lawyers that understand the complications of permanent care. In the event of your death, what happens to orders, We know that as a PC community, we know that, but the lawyers don't have that I have found, have a real good handle on that.
Mhm.
And so we were lucky that when we did find this one very particular person who had a lived experience of disability and had done some work for a PC family in the past, she's ready and willing to learn and to assist with those structures too. So
Yes.
um, it's complicated, and each individual circumstance is complicated, and each
Mhm.
individual child has different needs and different complications too.
Okay.
So
Great. Yeah.
process.
Okay. And did you consider any changes that may take place when your child turns 18? Were there any other things that you had to talk about or
Yeah, we
discuss?
did, and it's a constant thing, isn't it, about the transition age of 18. In our circumstance, our little fellow, 18, 21, 25, 30 won't make any difference. His disability is pathological and innate, and it's not going to change.
Mhm.
And so 18, when his orders cease to be relevant, and he does transition to being his own person in his own right, and those orders drop away,
Mhm.
that really won't matter for him. He won't understand that there's going to be a period in his life where he has choice about how he views himself in his family context,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yes.
But legally, enshrining his structure into a trust will protect some of that angst. And if we're
Mhm.
not around, the trustees or whoever's being able to care for him will have some guidelines, I guess, about how he needs to be dealt with, either by the government or by another family or by indeed trustees who administer the trust on his behalf.
Mhm.
And that was hugely important when we understood the ramifications of that 18-year-old thing.
Mm.
For him, and adding in the complexity of PC, yeah, that it's been really important for us to get our heads around how we view the world for him.
Great.
For
Yeah.
the other one, not so much. At
Okay.
the time we first decided to go down the pathway, I guess one of the big questions was at what point and at what age would structure for her be important?
Mhm.
Well, like a beneficiary of anybody's estate, we decided that she will be the beneficiary, and it will be up to whoever's caring for her, and however that structure works, because that's a separate structure,
Mhm.
guardianship orders and so forth, if you do die before they're of age. And her structure is way more simple
Mm.
because it doesn't have that disability trust factored in.
Right. Okay. Oh, there you go.
Things
And
may change. Things may change.
and so you mentioned earlier it was hard to find someone that had the sort of experience. So how did you, I guess, I mean, obviously you'd attended the webinar. Is that how you selected
Yeah.
the lawyer to draw up your estate, or
Yeah,
were there other
yeah,
things that you look
we
for?
really connected with,
Okay.
her own story was really interesting to us, and we had some, shared wisdom over disability, and so that was kind of where we started. But for 10 years, we'd, tried locally to get advice. We'd been to 3 different lawyers, and we had
Wow.
wills, we were set,
Yes.
but it was really, really basic, and it certainly does not have the SDT, component,
Hmm.
but also it didn't have any consideration at all for, the potential challenge from biological parents who don't actually have anything to do with him.
Mm.
And it didn't have any consideration for his siblings, which we really wanted to include in our eventual structure now that we have one. But
Yes.
the really basic stuff didn't have that, and there was no way of designing something that was fluid
Right.
to be
Yes.
able to accommodate significant number of siblings that our little bloke has.
Yes, yes. Oh, that's good advice. So, and were PCA families able to help you with your legal expenses via the Flexi funding?
Yes, thank goodness. We we had never considered, the $50 buy at the post office will kit. We knew we were more complex than that, but that's
Hmm.
what most people, sort of first go to at least get something on paper. It doesn't have enough in it. It doesn't have enough in it if you've a very uncomplicated family, but when you've got complicated needs and you're complex, it doesn't do it. Um, So the local advice here, was the cost was under $1,000 just to get, something reasonable up.
Yes.
The cost to get a more complex family without the disability trust from somebody who knows what they're talking about and their advice is weighty and can include things like power of attorney and medical powers of attorney and so on and so forth. When you start adding all that in, it's thousands of dollars. But you add the special disability trust in over the top of all of that, and not much change for $6,000.
Wow.
So yes,
Okay.
PCA Families were able to assist. We came to a joint cost. We covered the costs that would normally be expected to be covered by a family, and they were able to help with the sort of last component, which included, if you like, the special disability trust and the setup for him and his very particular needs. So
Yeah, that's great.
We're grateful to PCA Families for being able to find that funding for us.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's an investment in his future as well, right? So
yeah, that's right. And but for him.
Yes, for him, correct. Great. And do you have any other comments or considerations families should be thinking about or that you want to comment on?
It's not scary. Don't leave it alone. Don't wait. Don't put it off. Don't leave it for tomorrow. One of the clearest sort of salient moments of all of this was one of, I think, a financial advisor. I can't remember who. So somebody said to us, Naomi, what happened to your children when you died yesterday?
Oh,
right. Wow. No,
yeah.
well, the will was inadequate. The houses weren't structured well. No,
Wow.
no, I need to get onto it. And it coalesced my thinking. It coalesced my husband's thinking. And we all had kind of a panic reaction of, wow, we hadn't considered, if you're in a car accident yesterday, what's happening with your kids today?
Yeah, yeah. Because we're so much in the now, aren't we? Trying to take care of everything right now.
And we look forward to what we can affect. But you walk out the door and you get run over by a bus. Are you in a position where your kids are taken care of? There are structures in place. There are protections around them. There are plans for their future. And we didn't want to leave it anymore after that.
Yes.
And the $50 at the post office, people, just doesn't cut it.
It's way
more complex. There's way more things to consider. And, it's not so scary when you actually start having the conversation, and it's emotional for sure. But if you can think of it as making a plan on behalf of your child, as opposed to I'm going to die, it kind of takes it away a little bit.
Yes.
And we found that whilst speaking with a lawyer on 2 or 3 different occasions now, there has been tears shed, and we have had to do some serious thinking about what our wishes are for our own people, our own person. But really, the whole point is to make sure that things are okay for your kid.
Yes, absolutely. It's a contingency plan. It gets done in business every day, doesn't it?
Well, and it doesn't mean you're going to have that car accident tomorrow, but it does mean that if the worst should happen, then you've at least thought about it, and there's some protection in place.
Yes, it takes a bit of that stress off those that are left behind if you are clear with your wishes. So
that's right.
Yes, I think in lots of ways we can think about it as really helping our loved ones. So so
and not only your children, but your sister or your aunt or your best friend or whoever's going to be in the position of making some decisions on your behalf.
Yes, very
Don't
true.
leave it to state trustees. Don't let the government suck your money. Actually decide where your money needs to go.
You worked hard for it. So
that's right.
Well, thank you so much for all those wonderful insights. I'm off to do my will this afternoon. Very helpful. So and I think it'll be very helpful for our families. So thank you.
My pleasure.
So anyone making the time to listen to this recording, thank you for giving up your valuable time for the benefit of the young people in your life. If you are a permanent carer or parent needing support, please contact PCA Families at info@pcafamilies.org.au or 0390201833. Please subscribe or leave a review or share an idea for a future topic. Until next time, have an amazing week.